When I was a child, I remember getting together with my family almost every Sunday night and having a nice big family get together over at my mom and pop-pop's place. These were my dad's grandparents, and it was always around the dinner table, always involved some kind of food made by my mom, whether it be meatballs or fish or a roast. It always made my week, and it was one of the most important things, important family get-togethers we had. I'm going to take you back to those days today on Julia's Sunday Dinners. Hello, welcome back to my kitchen. This is Julia, and this is Julia's Sunday Dinners. This week, as I said, I'm taking you back to my past and showing you a little bit of what I ate while I was growing up. And one of the most important nights of the week was Sunday, and we always got together at my grandparents', and a lot of my memories and a lot of most people's memories have to do with tastes and smells. And one of the most important tastes and smells that I remember is baked fish and baked macaroni and cheese. We actually called it macaroni and cheese. What would happen is one of my uncles, I think a great uncle, one of my mom's brothers, I think, don't quote me on that, used to go out and fish and used to bring back these huge fish. I mean, these were at least this big. They were specks. Now, specks are available mostly in the South right at this time, Gulf Coast area, but they were fished out up here, but they were available here, and that was what they would bring most often. And it would be just real easy, just, season it a little bit, throw it in the oven, whole fish, and we'd have ourselves a great meal. And along with it would be Mom's macaroni and cheese. Today, excuse me, I'm going to make you my version of it, but the macaroni and cheese is going to be almost the exact same recipe as she used years ago. But the fish is going to be a recipe that I came up with a couple of years ago, and I hope you like it. So I'm going to get started by doing the macaroni and cheese. Alright, I'm going to show you the types of pasta that are commonly used to make this macaroni and cheese. It's going to be a baked macaroni and cheese, and you need something that'll stand up to it. Now, technically, this is macaroni. Macaroni is very simple. It's elbow macaroni, and it's what's used most often for macaroni and cheese. Whoa, well, that's gone. But that's why it's called macaroni and cheese. But that's a little too bland for me. I'm going to go for something a little more interesting. Some people use shells. Now, these are mini shells. But you can use medium-sized shells. You can use large-sized shells. Whatever you want. I sometimes do that because it does hold the sauce pretty well. There's a nice little area in there to hold the sauce. And that got away from me, too. All right. Now, also often used is fusilli or rotelli. Now, fusilli is a little bit wider than a rotelli, but this is a mini one, and that can be used too. But I like tubular pastas more than anything else, and I have ziti. Now, you probably had baked ziti before, and it holds up pretty well. But frankly, I like something that will hold the sauce a little better. That's why I'm going to use penne rigati. Rigati means ridges, and that's where that's the root for the word rigatoni as well. Rigatoni is thicker, and it's wider, and it still has ridges on it. Now this will work perfectly for what I'm doing. It's small enough so that when you scoop it, you won't break them as much, and it has the ridges on it that'll hold the sauce really well. So I'm going to dump that in there once we get the water boiling. I'll dump that in there, and once that is boiling, I'll be right back. Okay, well, that pasta's in there, and one thing you got to learn is when you're using pasta in a baked dish, whether you're making a big ziti, a spaghetti pie, or this dish, you got to cook it 1 to 2 minutes less than the time it says on the box, because you're going to be throwing it in the oven and you're going to be cooking it again. So it's going to keep cooking while it's in the oven. And if you cook it the regular time it calls for, it'll fall apart. You'll end up with mush. So you don't want mush. All right. Now I'm going to start on the sauce. I have a nice 10-inch pan here, and I'm going to get that on a low heat. Now, as you can tell, my stove is pretty dang crowded. I got a pretty small stove, but I'm going to do what I can. I would normally use a 12-inch pan for this, non-stick, but this is the only 10-inch pan I have, so hey. All right. Now, you've probably made macaroni and cheese before. Almost everyone's made macaroni and cheese from the box. A lot of people have made macaroni and cheese from scratch. Most of the time, you use regular old cheese. You use a roux, which is any kind of fat, whether it be butter, margarine, or whatnot, and flour. You mix that up, get it into a paste that's nice and boiling, and then you add everything else into it, and you got yourself a relatively good sauce. It comes together. Well, that's what my mom thought. And then my dad said to her, "Why are you doing it that way? My mom only used Velveeta. So I'm going to use Velveeta." And this is a nice 2-pound block of it. It was relatively cheap, and Velveeta is cheap. But for melting, you can't get any better than Velveeta for melting. So it's a cheese product. It's not really cheese, but it's a cheese product. It still tastes okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to pop that in our pan. I just threw that little piece there, but I'm going to take it out of here. And I'm going to chunk it up into pieces. And we're going to put it in a couple pieces at a time and melt that. It's going to melt relatively quickly on this stove. So I'm going to turn that down a little teeny bit. I don't want it to burn any. So I'm going to throw in the rest of this and let that melt down a little bit. And while that melts down, I'm going to stir my pasta a bit. Now I'm going to add the milk to this. Actually, this is supposed to be 1.5 pounds. I'm sorry, I thought it didn't look like enough. So let's get the other about 1/2 pound in there. Just get that down there. Okay. And we're going to add 1.5 cups of skim milk. Now you can use whole milk if you want, but I prefer skim milk. The only thing that I have to tell you is you cannot use 2% or 1% for cooking. It just does not work. Skim milk works, and whole milk works, and cream works. But anything else, and you got yourself a mess. Because of the fat content, it just doesn't work. So I'm going to add this in here, and that will actually help with the melting process, because the milk will heat up and then everything else will start melting pretty nicely. So that's going to melt down, and we're going to mix this up. And once that is done melting, be right back to show you what we're going to do with it.